Do your very first killing as quietly as you can. That means don't shoot. I got into a tunnel, and when I reached the bend in the corner in the dark, I thought I was alone, and then I smelled his breath, and we had a wrestling match in the dark. I got the upper hand, and I crushed this person's trachea.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Zero Bunker. Or if this is your first time here, welcome for the first time. And thank you guys for stopping by. I do want to give you a quick little warning that this is an unfiltered, no bullshit podcast where who knows what we're going to talk about. It'll probably involve dead bodies and tang and F-bombs. And
all the good shit.
All the good shit.
All the good ingredients to being a skull fucker.
That's true. And that's something we always want to make clear. If you are a skull fucker like us, this is a safe place for you.
Yeah, enjoy the fucking violence, man. But on the real though, I mean, this is also, a platform for you guys to learn, have a laugh, and just shoot the shit and be part of something great. Absolutely.
My name's CJ, by the way.
And I'm G.
And again, welcome you guys back. Now, let's dive right into it. G, I want to tell you something. I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you, but my entire life, my mom has been a nurse. Mm-hmm. And she's bounced around. She's one of these. She's kind of like me, actually, where it's like I'm never content in one place. So even though she's been a nurse, she's bounced around to it was the ER and the ICU and like all these different kind of genres of the job. Now, one of the coolest fucking jobs, in my opinion, is she was a flight nurse.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So she basically, for those of you that don't know what a flight nurse is basically, riding in the helicopters, the helicopter rescue, they have a crew, very similar to like a military, the military would have. And there's a nurse on board. Now, the reason I got to thinking about this was I got a chance to go out there it was West, Texas, not like West in tech, like the city's called, or the town's called West. But I got to go out there and actually do a little lap around in the Huey that they had. And the pilot is an old school Vietnam guy.
No shit.
Yeah. And he was wild, dude. Wild motherfucker. But, it got me thinking about it, just that whole kind of process. I was thinking about that. And I was like, I think we should do a story on Vietnam because we haven't really touched on that yet on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So one thing that I will say about Huey pilots and just crew chiefs and guys, so when we did our very first documentary under Zero Films Productions, and for those of you that are interested, you can go to Vimeo On Demand and you can look up Zero Films Productions. And it's called Stack Deck Journey of a Sky Trooper. And long story short, this guy was a door gunner in Vietnam. And he kind of introduced me into the whole, I guess like the cool side of the air wing in a way, just the way they acted and talked and they bonded and things that they did, man. It was actually pretty fucking cool, man. The pilots were just, they were responsible, but they just didn't give a fuck, dude. I mean, I got a picture of him, literally just picture him flying on a Huey, right? And he's literally hanging outside of the helicopter, like just so you can get a photo of himself. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So, yeah. But they during the war, I mean, the Huey and the pilots, man, they accounted for like a pretty significant percentage of the casualties during the war, because the helicopter was actually like the workhorse. They would, bring supplies, drop off guys, rescue people. So it was like a lifeline for anybody that was fighting in the jungle, So I got tremendous respect for, pilots and tremendous respect for all the guys who fought in Vietnam. In fact, when I started Zero Foxtrot, and to this day I still am, I'm heavily involved into sharing the stories of the Vietnam veterans because I mentioned this before. That's the one generation that I truly feel that they got fucked completely.
Yeah.
And I think to this day we still owe them a lot.
Well, and I don't know what you think about this, man, but and again, you got to keep in mind that from some of the major events that we talk about, World War I, World War II, Vietnam. So those guys, of course, are getting older, but like they're still, I would say, like within our grasp, kind of in our generation. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And what's interesting about those guys, the guys that served in Vietnam, they're just a little bit different. That whole generation of warriors, of skullfuckers, man, they're some crazy motherfuckers, man. Like there's some bad, and I love it, right? Like I love it. They're a lot more like unfiltered, uncensored type dudes. They're not, typically not the most, it's kind of like hippies meet skull fucking. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess in some ways, I guess you can kind of say that. But, I think there's like, the thing about the Vietnam War, because it was such a political war, there's all these misconceptions about it. You know what I mean? People think that all the Vietnam guys get drafted. That's not true. A majority of them were actually volunteered.
Right.
They think that, it was just, blacks that were fighting the war. And it's not true. There were minorities, but people fail to realize that the war in Vietnam, it happened because it needed to stop communism. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's bullshit because the North invaded the South anyways. But you know what? Yes, it took 10 years, 11 years, but we stopped them in their tracks. So just think about if we didn't do a goddamn thing, right? The communism would have spread regardless, So I always say, and I'm sure a lot of Vietnam veterans can attest to this, is that the politics, quote unquote, lost the war. You know what I mean? But not the guys on the ground. Absolutely not.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. I look, even in our time, whenever you and I served, I noticed a big disconnect from kind of the political day-to-day talk, here in the States or with civilians versus what was actually going on. And I think that sometimes there seems to be a political disconnect, or people have this misconception due to marketing and salacious, headlines and shit like that. And it sucks because, it really covers up, I think, some of the truth behind, what the importance of what really happened.
Right. Absolutely. And one thing that, about the media that you were saying, the media, like if you look at the Second World War, for example, it was very, it was very straightforward. You know what I mean? It showed what was happening on the battlefield. There was no filters. There was nothing. In fact, one thing that I wanted to mention on this, the Marines fought in the Pacific, and one of the islands that we had to take over was Tarawa. It was like 3 square foot mile island, dude. I mean, it was like a dot. And Marines had to go ahead and take that fucker over. Bloodiest battle, a lot of casualties. And there was a cameraman that got assigned to go out there and film the entire fucking fight. And it was so brutal that when the footage was done, usually back in those days, like, people didn't have TVs, they had the radio, or you go to the movie theater and it would show like the news, right? The newsreel. And the president of the United States had to decide whether this documentary or this footage had to be shown to the public because it was so gory, it was so graphic, it was so just real that they didn't know how people were going to be affected. And the president said, hey, people have to see this shit, period.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened. Now, focusing into Vietnam, the media played a whole different role because, and to this day, I think personally from Vietnam until on, the media is kind of what shifts the balance of how things are perceived. You can take one event and you have two media outlets who kind of like shifted in one way, shifted to the other. And I think the news should be straight, no bias, no nothing.
And then that was honestly that really, and it sucks because the Vietnam War was directly affected by that, and I think, and unfortunately that trickles down to each yes. soldier and each warrior, each Marine that was a part of that, and it sucks. The truth is, guys, I mean, let's face it, whether your social media news outlet stuff, just your buzz feeds, freaking, Fox, CNN, whatever, there unfortunately is political bias that, and it, I get it, right? It's like whatever's popular is what you play to so that your business grows. But what ends up happening is you rarely have objectivity. You rarely have like just legitimate, like this is what happens. It doesn't matter if it's our camp or their camp. Like this is fucked up or this is righteous or whatever, you know?
Right. Absolutely, man. And, plus you got the whole fake news and all the other stuff. I mean, if you look back in the 60s, you had Walter Cronkite. He was actually the most trusted man in America. I mean, he was like the guy that told the stories on the news. And so,
Dude, do you think we can be that now?
I venture to say that, here's the deal, guys. I mean, we hold no fucking punches or grudges or any of that shit. We're straightforward, man. We're realistic, dude. If we are wrong, we'll say it. If we're right, we'll say it. And, we give a fuck and we don't give a fuck at the same time. But this is like our version of it. This is just us being completely straight about things, you know?
Yeah, and look, I'll keep it real with you right now. Like even, G and I are very, very close friends. We serve together, have a lot of similarities, but we also have a lot of differences when it comes to certain politics and things like that.
Right.
And you know what? We're sitting here and like, he can say something to me and I'm like, you know what? You're fucking right. And I wasn't thinking of that right.
And it's all about being open-minded, and I think sometimes we get caught up in the whole pride issue, and there's some things that just don't make fucking sense, and there's some things that do. And here's one thing, I don't get involved in politics and all that. I have my own firm beliefs and in a way, but I'm also, again, I'm open to, if you have a reason to change my mind, then fucking tell me your side. You know what I mean? Tell me your story. So
no, we do. It's no politics, no religion here. Is that how we do it?
Just Tang. Tang is the only religion.
Tang is religion. Okay.
Make sure you go. What is it again? www.zerofoxtrot.com.
Yeah, zerofoxtrot.com for years.
It's like one of those like CIA fucking programs, where they kind of like throw the subliminal messages and shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Buy yours today. Slowly drinks from zero mug. So let's, and I know we're kind of going into politics, but here's the thing: is like that when it comes to the Vietnam War, the truth is that was a big part of this. We had a whole culture shift, and then in a war going on during that really just it really melded together into this event. And I was curious, G, though, like cutting through kind of like the politics and like getting through, all of that stuff. This is like big picture, macro perspective of Vietnam, but we're known for doing stories, man. And I know you got a pretty sick story of these guys that crawled around tunnels, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So, so one thing to mention is the battle space in Vietnam is, completely just picture yourself in the jungles. It's hot, fucking bugs and tigers and VC and booby traps and all kinds of shit out there,
It's basically boot camp in Camp Lejeune.
Yeah, not quite. No, not even close. But one thing, Vietnam was all guerrilla warfare. It was actually, back during World War II and World War I.
Were there real guerrillas?
I don't know. I know they got tigers out there and snakes.
Right. Okay.
So, but I will say, during World War I, World War II, and this is kind of just throwing the perception of it. During the First World Wars, you had goals. We got to take Tokyo. We got to take Berlin. We got to take this trench, right? You had like kind of those defined lines. You had armies. And then Vietnam came along, and the victories were actually measured by body counts.
Damn, that's awesome as fuck.
Like,
God damn.
It didn't matter what hill you took. You could take a hill and lose all these guys, kill all these people, right? And then a week later you leave it. But it was all about the body count. That's how you measure the victory. I mean, how brutal is that shit, right?
Shit. That's like I feel like there's like video games and shit like that, right? Like your numbers are just.
But that's the way that it was. Weekly reports about how many motherfuckers did we kill today. You know what I mean? And here's the thing: like some of those numbers were inflated because you needed to show a victory, right? But on the ground,
couldn't you just count the ears around each person's necklace to decide?
Believe it or not, actually, and I mean, don't quote me on this, but this is just something that I read and heard, and if somebody says I'm wrong, then please let me know. But I know for a fact, though, this is one thing I do know for a fact is that you got to show proof that you killed some motherfuckers. And if I remember right, the South Vietnamese army actually used to bring fucking ears and fingers or whatever the fuck it is to actually show confirmed kills.
Man,
You know?
if that's true, that is some savage ass shit, man.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, in certain parts of Texas, coyotes are so bad that they pay you to kill them, and so you have to bring their ears.
yeah, just like hogs and shit, right?
Yeah, I guess.
I mean,
don't know.
hogs, you just got to wipe them out, man. But so
They
talking
call
about
them varmints.
yeah, but talk about wiping shit out, man. So you get the guys on the ground, and there was this unofficial specialty which is called a tunnel rat, and you're wondering, well, what the fuck is that? So the VC and the guerrilla, the way they would fight, they actually because they didn't have like the massive air power, we were constantly bombing the shit out of them and all kinds of stuff. So they were fighting kind of like an insurgency, and they were good at it. Okay, so they built these fucking complex underground tunnel systems, and I'm talking about like intricate, dude. And under these tunnel systems, man, they had hospitals, they had weapon storages, they had, I mean, you could hide an entire regiment and you wouldn't fucking see it until these guys start popping out of it. So it was pretty common for infantry guys to go out in the bush and come across a tunnel. So it's like, well, what do you do with it? So they start sending guys out there. And it wasn't like saying, okay, this is a specialty, you're a tunnel rat, here's a pass for you. It's kind of like, hey, you're 5'6" and below. Here's a 45, here's a bayonet, here's a flashlight, get your ass down there and fucking kill whatever's in there and then destroy the tunnel. So just picture that for a second, literally cramming yourself into a tunnel, right?
Actually, it's easy to picture. So they had a scene in Forrest Gump where they told his ass to get down and he was definitely taller than 5'6", man. Fuck that.
Yeah, well, Tom Hanks can pull it off, man. I mean, he Omaha Beach and Saving Private Ryan and all kinds of other shit. He can pull it, Bubba, right?
Yeah. You don't think they sent him down there because like, you know, his brain was broken or something, right? No.
Well, I can tell you this about these tunnel rats, dude. One thing that I am wondering is how do they slide their balls into the fucking tunnels? I have no idea, man.
Jesus Christ.
But just picture this, man. You have a tunnel, which is like, I mean, it's like a small hole. You go in there and complete fucking darkness. Okay. And you know what? And before I even get into it, so I'm actually going to read something to you about a guy who was a tunnel rat and what his experience was like. So he says, there was a certain rule in tunnel warfare. You do not turn on the light. Unless you're really sure you're alone, use your senses. Do your very first killing as quietly as you can. That means don't shoot. I got into a tunnel, and when I reached the bend in the corner in the dark, I thought I was alone, and then I smelled his breath, and we had a wrestling match in the dark. I got the upper hand, and I crushed this person's trachea, held him down while he died, and then I got out. I beat and strangled someone in the dark, but that wasn't the only casualty. The other casualty was the civilized version of me. And this was Sergeant James Gillum, 1st Battalion, 22nd IR, 4th ID in the Central Highlands, 1969. So just kind of like let that sink in for a second, man. I mean, you're going into the dark and you have to use your senses, and you got to understand that these tunnels, man, I mean, they were booby trapped. They were filled with fucking water and poisonous snakes. They would actually hang snakes on the roof of the tunnel so it could bite you in the neck if you got close to it, you know?
Jesus.
So it took some fucking balls to get out there, and you have no idea how long these tunnels are. They could fucking bury you alive. You could obviously get fucking killed. And obviously, like he says, man, I mean, shit got fucking personal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So
Up close.
So this dude is he's crawling through a tunnel,
Right.
in the complete dark. Gets so close that he can smell the dude's breath.
Right.
Gets in a wrestling match, crushes his fucking throat, kills this dude, and I'm assuming basically leaves this tunnel at some point, not even knowing who the fuck he killed.
Right. Yeah.
God damn. That is
that's-
crazy.
That's some real brutal shit, but that's war. And these tunnel rats guys, I mean, they, in my understanding, I think they actually got extra pay for it, but they literally went out there and it was literally their fucking wits.
Yeah, I'm gonna need some extra pay for that, man. If you could hook me up with some of that dependent pay or something, like, I don't know, I need some shit. Hey, man, I was just thinking, like, the only tunnel I've ever entered in the pitch black was your mom.
I was about to say the same shit, but you beat me to the punch, man. So
Dude, that just blows my mind though. I mean, first of all, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm like super claustrophobic. Like I'm like, I know people, struggle with that kind of thing, but I definitely don't. I can't even imagine crawling in a small space, even if I knew nobody was in there. But like crawling through something that's only the width of your body for a long distance, like that is a scary thought process, man. And you just said something about like being buried alive, and it's like, you just if you get stuck down there, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like what the fuck, man?
the dangers are like, they're up there, man. But and needed to be done. You know what I mean? And again, this goes back to my remark. How the hell do you slide your balls down a fucking tunnel like that? You know what I mean? Because you had to have them.
Your gunny's yelling at you enough to where you make
I don't know, man. I don't know. But if you're interested, like I said, there's plenty of information articles about it. And in fact, I actually know a tunnel rat who lives in Houston, and maybe we should pay a visit to him. It'd be actually pretty interesting to get his story.
Will you ask him the balls question?
I will. Yeah, absolutely. I will.
All right, cool, man. So this is just one really crazy story from Vietnam. I feel like Vietnam seems to be one of the more, and again, it's not to take away from any conflict or whatever, and maybe this is just my thinking, just based off of like, what I understand today, but it seems like Vietnam just had some of the most kind of chaotic scenarios, you know what I mean? Like it almost seems a little out of control whenever I think of it, or I, kind of read some of these stories and stuff. It seems like just...
Well, I will put it this way, man. I would say that each war has its own hell. That's the way I describe it. I think comparing wars, sometimes it's not the right thing to do. I think that war is war, man, regardless. I think the only thing that does change is the technology behind it, maybe the enemy, the types of enemy that you're fighting. But war is war. I mean, the emotional side of it, the brutality of it. You're gonna have to kill somebody. It doesn't matter whether it was 300 years ago or now. You know what I mean?
Well, if you, and again, there's no way to fully compare conflicts, but if you were to say Iraq and Afghanistan, looking back, is Vietnam, you think, the closest association to what? Because we talked about like kind of the insurgency and the way that fighting is. I would say
the Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan and the GWAT in general, I think they have similarities in regards to the battle spaces and the politics and the mindset and I mean, I put it this way. I've talked to some Vietnam veterans, and it's kind of like our thing, where it's like, well, where's the end to this, right? Or what are we doing here? Or what is the concept of this? And and I'm talking about from a ground level perspective. The guys in Vietnam were like, dude, I'm just here to do my fucking tour and get the fuck out. You know what I mean? And I think with Iraq and Afghanistan, I mean, I can't speak for everybody. I'll speak for myself on this. I was just concerned about me and my guys, and that was it. I could give a flying fuck about what happened afterwards or before that. All I know is that we're there for 7, 8 months, 9 months. We're going to do our job the best we can to do what we were trained to do, to do what we were supposed to do. And one thing here's another similarity too that I noticed. When Vietnam veterans got back, especially, during the early 70s, the protesters were going on and everything else. And they were, people had, and it kind of goes back to the media, people had this misconception that fucking Vietnam guys were out there just murdering women and kids. Now, I will say this. There have been incidents. Sure, absolutely, like any other war, right? But to say and to label an entire generation of fighters as baby killers or as, oh, you guys are going out there to deliberately just murder kids and women, that's absolutely not true. And I see the same thing in Afghanistan and Iraq. Yes, if there have been incidents, absolutely. Are there fucking nut jobs? Sure. But it's not fair to label everybody for that. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying they're coming us to saying that we're baby killers, but it blew my mind when I would talk about it with some people and they're like, oh, well, people really think that we would go out there and literally patrol and just murder fucking Iraqis. Like that was our entire intention, which is completely untrue. And they don't see a lot of the good that has been happening that we did out there, like build schools and all the other shit.
Well, and this is where, and again, I know this kind of goes in a certain political direction, but the truth is like, again, both these conflicts we're talking about, specifically Vietnam, revolve around this. And here's the thing, I've said very openly on this podcast that it's up to us as combat veterans to be able to function in the civilian world and to understand, the civilian side of things. But truth be told, what I see typically is the majority of civilian, or back in the States anyway, have a misconception of what it's actually required to defend, your freedoms or whatever it is that we're fighting for in the conflict. Like it's so easy to sit back and say, man, that's fucked up, or this is good, or that is bad, and not fully understanding like the kind of decisions that have to be made and the weight that is on someone's shoulders. I agree with what you're saying is like, 100%, there are some fucked up things that happen in combat and in country, and there are some instances, but 90% of the time, it's not those instances, and that damn sure doesn't define it. It's kind of like when we talk about like the police issues, right? There has to be compassion on both ends. I'm not saying there's anything right about some cop just gunning somebody down out of nowhere. That's fucked up. But you know what? What about the other 1,000 times that person had to make a really brash decision in a combat fucking zone? He watched his friends get killed, or he watched some other civilian get killed, or whatever. Like it's
right.
I think that the balance is either just one direction or the other, and you have to put everything into context a lot better than just labeling it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm only gonna just slightly touch on this real quick. But first off, I have a lot of good friends who are in law enforcement, and a lot of them are veterans. And I have tremendous respect for anybody who dons the uniform, goes out there and protects our community, despite what people may think. Now, again, just like the military, just like any other fucking job in the world, you're going to have fuck-ups. You're going to have fucking bad apples. You're going to have people who make bad decisions. But sometimes you got to also understand the situations that these guys get put into, just like the military. You got a split-second decision of making a life or death, or you don't have, they don't have the privilege of sitting back and saying, well, let me really think about this thing. Let me think how this is going to go. Because once the bell is rung, it's wrong. Like once the shot goes, once you do that particular action, you can't take it back. And unfortunately, in those situations, the results could be drastic in a positive, negative way. So I think to be so judgmental, when somebody has to make a call, there's not a clear level of understanding and, like you're saying, of compassion in a way. Now, I'm not saying that guys need to go out there and just start murdering motherfuckers. I'm not saying that. I'm not condoning that. But what I'm trying to say is that you get this whole thing about, they're killing black people and yada, 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 and all that. Well, let's take a step back and look into it, right? I mean, is that what's really happening? Or is it just because the media is focusing on that? But you made a good point. What about the 1,000 times that maybe the guy saved somebody else's life, or you know what I mean?
And that's why I think that every instance, especially the way that we absorb media here, guys, is like here's what typically happens. You're the average person. You're on YouTube and you see some conflict that happened between maybe an officer and somebody, or whatever the situation is. What you need to be able to do. This is a good fucking piece of advice for anybody, in my opinion. Try to disprove the narrative that is being painted. Start with that. If you think about like the scientific method is trying to disprove yourself or trying to disprove a point. And the reason that you want to do that is because in a scenario that you can't, you look at all the data and you're really trying to look at it the all other way and you can't. Well, there's a good chance that maybe it's correct. Right. Now, a lot of people though instead take whatever the media is saying or whatever the fucking headline is or whatever the fuck it is, and you make the assumption, well, that's what it is. Guys, whether it's video footage or whatever, like there's more context to a story than I think most people are prepared to understand. And you got to be slow and look at things more objectively. And again, that goes back to the media. And I think with Vietnam, it was a great example. With the Iraq war and Afghanistan, we saw some of that. I think probably nothing like those guys experience whatsoever. But
one thing that I want to actually interject, this is for you guys that like to, read books or get some more information in regards to what he was saying, actually get a glimpse of
So this grunts, go ahead and just stop listening. This is for people that read and shit. Okay. We'll have a color book or something.
Yeah, no crayons for us, man. But check this out. I mean, one thing, if you're into books, you want to read something, you want to get some good information, some non-biased bullshit. I'm talking about some real experience, real shit about Vietnam, what it's like to be on the ground. I highly suggest you pick up this book, Fields of Fire. It's by James Webb. He was a young officer in the Marines, and he has seen some shit. And I highly suggest you pick it up if you really want to know what it's like to be a grunt in the bush, in the boonies, fucking, and having the level of compassion, understanding about leadership and different scenarios and situations that happen in a combat zone, especially in that type of environment. So I highly suggest you pick it up. I know a lot of you have probably read it. But if you haven't, go fucking pick one up. I was actually fortunate enough that his son actually commented on one of my posts that I did about James Webb. So that was pretty epic.
Dude, so, and I know like sometimes, any podcast or whatever, like we kind of just, we go through the bush and sometimes conversation goes in different directions. On this topic of, political, not basically looking at things reasonably, did you find yourself in country at any given time? Because I felt like there were times where I was kind of torn. Number one, first time in my life to be put in such a position to where you have to make a decision, the life or death decision, or the, my guys or your guys kind of situations.
Right.
And so I felt what that feels like to really be in that scenario where here in the next 5 seconds, I got to make a decision that might kill my convoy, or I'm going to kill this guy or whatever, you know? But then at the same time, I also saw some of these bad apples, in person that were people I served with, and I saw scenarios unfold in country. And so what's interesting to me is that in country serving with these guys, I saw scenarios where I'm like, hey, motherfucker, like that's not cool that you're fucking, doing that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You're about to, I don't know, make a decision on something that's objectively questionable in my opinion. And then at the same time, I also have so much more compassion for having to be that decision maker on whether or not you pull the trigger. So, coming into the civilian world now, the way that I look at it is like I have so much compassion for the police, and then I have equal amounts of compassion for somebody that has, been shot unnecessarily. So I don't know if you have anything on that.
Well, first off, I want to say there's two different rationales and mindsets, okay? And it's not fair to kind of align those or to kind of connect those because there's no connection on it. And this is what I mean by that. When you're in war and when you're in a combat zone and all that, that's one side of you. And then you got the civilian side when you get out and you learn to be, reintegrate yourself and yada, yada, yada. That's a whole different side.
Sure.
So the way I look at it is kind of the black and white opposites, right? What's right is wrong over there and what's wrong here is right over. You know what I mean? Like, so it's kind of like literally being on the other side of the planet and trying to compare the same thing, and you can't. So the things that maybe we did out there, they're completely right and justifiable. They may be completely fucked up here in the civilian world and back and forth. So I used to make that comparison. I never understood why. And then I realized that you cannot make a connection because there's no way you can do this. So if you were out there and you had to make a split second decision to take a life, or maybe you had to take a life for something that you probably would have, for a reason that you would have never done it. Now you're looking into it. Now you're like, I would have never done that shit. But you can say that now. You know what I mean? Or a civilian can say it. Like we had an instance where, an old lady got smoked because she was carrying a bag, and come to find out it was a bag of apples, right? Even in the real world, maybe nobody would have shot that person because she was just carrying a bag. But in that situation, carrying a bag could have meant fucking, everybody dying. So I think it's again, I think it's unfair to try to compare those things because they're so extreme on both ends. And I personally believe that war, there's really nothing black and white. It's just gray. It's a gray shaded area. I mean,
let me ask you this. So I agree 100%. You can't, especially in the extreme scenarios, you cannot just compare the two. I mean, it doesn't make sense. But okay, like you probably saw scenarios where, soldiers, Marines or whatever, I don't know, like maybe they were fucking with somebody like unnecessarily or like doing something like I saw people like
you're saying kind of like if it was somebody was doing something fucked up and you're like, hey, even though we're in war, that's still fucked up.
Yeah. Okay. You're like say you got a captive or you got somebody zip tied or whatever, right. And you fucking
I think that again, I see what you're saying. And I think there is it's such a marginal gray area. So I put it this way. There are some things that maybe were done that are not morally right, but I think the excuse behind it is like, yeah, but we're in war. Who gives a fuck, right?
Right.
But yes, I also have seen the extreme side where, yes, there were guys who've done some, shit where you're like, dude, like, what the fuck? Like, really? You know what I mean? And
right.
And it doesn't matter whether we're in war or you're not. You just don't do that shit, right? So I'm not going to get into like actual examples or say anything, but I think that again, like, yes, I've seen extremes like that, but also I've seen, there's still, you can still control, the human side of things.
Well, and that's in my opinion, I think that's where, each of the organization, whether it's the police or it's the military, whatever, that's why we got to police ourselves. Because the truth is like that one example, whether it was wartime or here in the States, like where so that bad apple does some fucked up shit or whatever, that becomes sensationalized, that becomes media attention, that becomes all kinds of shit. And now all of a sudden you got this big ass black eye all on the entire organization. Right. And, so it's got to be internally, corrected basically.
And here's the other thing too, man. I mean, also there are shit that, I give you an example. I know when we were in Ramadi, for example, and back in 2006, and, it was kind of like the Wild West over there. But anyways, long story short, I distinctly remember that our battalion commander was like, he refused to have any kind of media out there. Now, not because we're out there fucking, doing illegal shit or doing some, murdery ass whatever. It was just the mere fact that it's like, hey, motherfuckers got a job to do, and I don't need you guys to put a bad press on them because they may take one thing. And I remember there was a particular instance where civilians got killed, and it was something that was completely preventable, and unfortunately, some civilians got killed. But it's war. Shit happens, right? And next thing you know, I think it was like about a month later or whatever, somehow came to like the news or local newspaper, and it was like completely distorted. Marines murdered all these guys, and you know what I mean? They don't even know the facts behind it. So that's kind of like the reason why the media wasn't really around to what we were doing. Because here's the truth of it too, man. In war, man, there is some shit that, guess what? People may not accepted it, but it's fucking war, period.
Yeah. And there,
bottom line.
So I definitely agree with that. First of all, I'm a huge fan of, the independence of media. I think people have, I like the idea that people, can see open-ended, like, things that happen. Now, with that being said, on the extreme end of things, I think that the mass majority of people are not willing to be able to see the harsh truth for what it is.
Right.
And that fucking, I don't know how to better explain it, guys. Like, I don't mean to get all religious on you, but I think religion is an example of something that is important, because I think that, let's say that some of the things that religious people believe in are not true. I don't know if the majority of people are willing to be able to accept that truth, in that it's better to have something to, believe in a greater thing, even if it's not even fully curtain up. You know what I'm saying? Like I think having the curtain there to a certain extent protects people. You know what I'm saying?
Well, so now, kind of like we get into like these whole delicate subjects about it, and this is something that, it could go on forever or whatever. I personally believe that everybody's got their own belief system, whether it's about religion or politics or whatever the heck it is. And I think The problem that we have with society is that everybody's trying to convert to their own beliefs. And I think that's completely fucking wrong, right? So it's like, if you tell me the earth is flat, right? And I'm telling you, no, it's not. And you fucking try to do your best to convince me. Well, just live with the fact that I'm telling you, I'm not going to believe that the earth is flat, period. Bottom line. Right. And I think having that's what I mean by coexist and all that bullshit is like, dude, like, don't fucking, I'm willing to listen to your opinion, but don't try to trying to like just throwing down my fucking neck about certain things, because if I decide to see it, then it's fine. But I think there's also the level of acceptance that, hey man, if you don't believe in God, then that's your problem. Great. Awesome. I can only tell you so much. And then it's up to you to realize if you want to do. You don't believe it. You think cops are, just murdering people. Here are the facts. You don't believe it, then that's your fucking problem. So I think having a level of, some people are just completely ignorant. Some people have their own belief systems. And what I think is wrong, maybe it's right for them. And
they say right and wrong is just subjective. It's
right.
Yeah, the whole idea of what you live your life by is your subjective belief system that is the way to live life, and that doesn't mean that it crosses over to the person next to you. So
right, I mean, look at here we go, ISIS, perfect fucking example, right?
Oh yeah,
I mean,
they think they're fucking righteous, man.
Like, they just think that their job is to everybody got to be a fucking Muslim or you're gonna die. Like, see, if you just kept the shit within your own little group or whatever, nobody will fuck with you. But no, you got to go out there and fucking execute motherfuckers and invade fucking regions and murder people and all that shit over something that's completely bullshit. And you try to impose on that. And it's kind of like, that's the problem. If they were just like, hey, dude, I don't give a flying fuck about your ISIS fucking Sharia law and shit. Live in your own fucking camp, do your shit, and that's it. We're done. No, but they got to cram it. That's why they're getting fucking bombing the living fuck out of them. That's why they're almost all fucking dead. Because they just want to keep pushing that shit, man. You know what I mean? That's just one little example. So bottom line is, if you believe in something, great, awesome. You have the freedom to do that. Just don't fucking impose it on people. You want to you want to enlighten somebody, then do it correctly, but don't fucking just shove it down somebody's fucking throat, because then you get fucking negative pushback. So that's the way I see it.
Don't tell me how to make love to my skulls. Man, some of y'all motherfuckers gonna be like, man, back with the skull fucking jokes. We're not gonna all the way let it go. We can't.
And it's kind of like a staple of our
this is our fucking, this is part of our shtick. All right, man, this is part of the thing.
Yeah, but just remind me, this is talking about, here we go, talk about changing perspectives here a little bit, right? And so, and I want you to share this with everybody that's listening and watching this. So you got to tell them, because we talked about Vietnam, you got to tell them what happened when you went to the gas station and met the Vietnam veteran, right? Like what happened? And, because I think that's kind of a shift of where nothing gets crammed down your throat, but you kind of had maybe a wider understanding, right?
Absolutely. Actually, and it starts even well before that. I met G at the gym, and we built a friendship, and I got to understand what Zero Foxtrot was, and
it's a close friendship.
Spotted him on squats, if you know what I mean.
Squats.
So yeah, man. Got to understand Zero Foxtrot, what it stood for, what the basically the messaging behind that. And a lot of you guys listening, you follow the Instagram, you maybe are part of the bunker now, and you understand like that Zero Foxtrot is a very unique brand in my opinion, because it brings awareness to a bigger picture, and it highlights kind of like something that in my opinion doesn't get brought to light enough. So there's a deeper meaning, and it's not something that's shoving like, ooh, America down your throat, or they're not even like, it's very kind of open-ended. It allows you to be however fucked up you want to be, or however fucking America you want to be. And, so I get to understand Zero Foxtrot, and not a single time has G ever tried to sell me on some, this religion of ZF or
besides
something.
Tang.
Except for Tang, but I was sold already. But yeah, he's never like he just was himself, and showed me what the brand was about and stuff. And
I kind of pulled a Koresh without the fucking fiery scene in the end.
yeah, so I'm expecting at the end of there's poison in this. It's so anyway, flash forward, we got the bunker stuff. I'm kind of like working with ZF, and I'm at the gas station, and I'm actually going to buy some beer myself. And this older gentleman in front of me is actually he's putting some beer in this bag that he has, and I noticed a Vietnam veteran hat, and so I told him, I was like, hey, I want to thank you for your service, sir. I know I'm sure you have some crazy stories. And he was just really cool, laid back, very humble guy, man. He he basically said, something like, yeah, man, I got friends in town and they didn't bring their own beer, so I'm buying his own, and he said, he was like, yeah, we definitely had a time, but you guys, and he saw my KIA bracelet. He said, you guys did y'all's part, as well. And like, he didn't really, he told me a couple of things, a couple of stories I'm not necessarily going to get into, but I will say that it seemed like he didn't spend a lot of time on himself. He really wanted to show me thanks for what I had done. And to me, that, I mean, as flattering as that is, it's kind of hard, because I'm like, man, but that ain't shit compared to you guys, man. Like, and so anyway, I bought his beer for him, and I called G, I texted G after that. And this is really what brings this story around, is that, I'm not going to say that I don't have respect for veterans. I have the utmost respect for veterans. My great grandfather, actually, I never told you, served in World War II.
Oh, wow.
So I have a great respect for him, but I've never really been into kind of the history and the deeper understanding that Zero Foxtrot and Zero Bunker now brings to the table. Hearing these stories, just really like bathing in this history, and it's honestly given me so much greater of an appreciation than I ever had. That I don't know if I would have taken that step to talk to this gentleman. Right. And I hate saying that. Like, that makes me feel like a shitbag now. But subliminally, I think that G and Zero Foxtrot have made a huge impact on me. And it wasn't ever shoving it down my throat. It was basically just, hey man, like, did you hear about this story? And did you see this? And like, you just showed me stuff. And, and dude, Alex, our friend Alex Keller, if he's listening to this, he's a great example of that too, man. He actually no understanding of the military, and so as a matter of fact, he kind of had a disdain for certain military, because he had a lot of these motarded, Marine veterans and stuff around him. I think that some people he had a bad taste in his mouth with certain military veterans, and we know those motherfuckers too. But he never really got to see the other side of it. And through listening to Zero Bunker and talking with G as well, he literally sent me this long text message saying, dude, I have so much different of a perspective and understanding, and I have so much respect that I almost feel bad that I never saw that side of it.
Sure. Yeah. And so that's, I will say that I'm kind of, I'm actually extremely happy that this is the message that we're bringing, that this is bringing out in people, and there was a post that I did a while back, and sometimes I try to give a piece of advice, kind of throw it out there, and kind of get my mind on, kind of share what's on my mind sometimes, and maybe get some lessons out there for you guys. And there's one thing that I will say, it's that you can only fake the funk for so much. You always got to be yourself. You always got to stay true to your cause and to your principles. And so when when ZF, I wouldn't even say got started, when it started evolving into what it is now, I made a promise that it's like, I don't give a fuck how much money I make. I don't give a fuck how much cool shit I'm fucking selling out there. And I'm never going to sell out. And I'm always going to make sure that the morals and the principle, which is covering these guys, which is taking my time to tell these stories, to do these podcasts, to make sure that you guys, understand and have a better appreciation. Like, so me hearing things like what CJ just said and with Alex, that's huge, because yes, ZF is a successful company, and I'm blessed for that. And it's going to grow even more. We got a lot of crazy shit happening. Great. But we're still taking our time to, to cover these stories and to make sure that they just don't die in vain. So I think I'm super excited about that. I'm actually super happy about it. And hopefully if you're listening to this or you're watching this on YouTube, that if you see a veteran, like, make sure you thank them. And here's another question I get a lot of people. They're like, dude, how the fuck do you reach out to these guys? I'm a civilian. How do I talk to them? I don't want to intrude to them. Honestly, it's like trying to pick up a fucking chick, right? It's like, you want to be the guy that's just like walking around the whole fucking time for like 20 minutes. And then like, you don't have the balls to say something. Just go up and tell the guy, literally go up. Hey, sir, just wanted to come up and say thank you for your service. And you'd be surprised. You feel like you get this weight off your shoulder. And I personally believe, because I think it's in every, every citizen has to, it's a responsibility that we have to thank these veterans, right? So if you see somebody, literally go up to them. It's not going to bother them. It's not, I promise you, like, don't get into fucking, how many guys did you kill, man? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't ask, like,
don't fucking do that.
Have respect and shit, but literally go up. And I'm telling you, you probably made that guy's fucking day. I guarantee you, man.
Yeah.
Literally, that's all. Because you know what? Maybe you as a civilian or you as a veteran, you let's say you don't understand or you can never comprehend what these guys have been through. But you know what? You don't have to, because you showing that you care, that could, like, fuck, you know what? Like when I did going back to Vietnam, when I did the Zero Films production with Stack Deck, which was the story about the door gunner in Vietnam. So we had a small little premiere here in Austin. Had about 30 guys. It was an awesome time, man. And he was so proud, man. He came with his first Cav hat. I hooked him up with a 5-star hotel, dude, paid all this shit, and brought him out there. He has some other Vietnam veterans that came. And I was like, I really hope that we did it right. You know what I mean? And so we played it, and he was like just all emotional, man. It was funny. It was great. It was just awesome, man. And towards the end, it literally said, hey, this documentary is dedicated to all the Vietnam veterans and welcome home. So when it was done, he came up to me and he said, and I'm never going to forget this, Johnny, if you're listening to this, dude, I love you, man. He said, this is the one time that you made me feel like being proud of serving again. You know what I mean? So this is the guy who got spat on at the fucking airport. I mean, if you go on Vimeo, you can watch it. Stack Deck, Journey of a Sky Trooper. This is the guy that got spat on when he came back, right? This is the guy that he did his part. This is the guy that could not get a job because he was a Vietnam vet. I mean, being a Vietnam vet was like a black label. And this is the guy who volunteered to for all the burial, for all the veterans who were getting like full military honors and in Fort Sam Houston. So he did his part, and he still loves, he tried to connect with all the veterans from his unit. But anyway, so it was just an incredible experience. And you know what? All the time that we took us to do this film, and it was a great project, but it all mounted up to him saying those words. And honestly, like, nothing could ever top any of that. And I believe that if you take the time to, never miss a chance to thank a vet, man, ever. I mean, if I've met him in fucking HEB and grocery stores. Like, I remember I pulled out, it was during Veterans Day. I fucking pulled on the side of the road. It was in the middle of fucking Spicewood, Texas. And there was a Marine Corps flag, and I was like, I'm gonna stop and go fucking thank that guy, dude. And I did, and it was a great fucking experience. He was also a Vietnam vet, and he had an incredible story. But just little things like that, man, it goes a long way. So,
yeah, man, I think we got to end this one right there, man. That's truly amazing, and I know it's changed my life just being associated with this, and I'm excited to be a part of it, and hopefully you guys are enjoying the channel and everything. And do me a huge favor, if you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing or sticking around the iTunes or whatever that may be. We also encourage comments, constructive criticism, whatever it is, guys. Like we want to see communication, man. We're gonna take every thumbs up and every thumbs down, and we're gonna keep pushing forward and trying to make this thing the best we can, and continue to pay respect to those that deserve our respect.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to shop some cool fucking gear, man, go to www.zerofoxtrot.com. If you're wondering what the fuck we're wearing, this is the Townie shirt. That's our Warrior Poet shirt, and you're gonna see we're big fans of movies, man. This is from the movie The Town and Braveheart, so I suggest you pick some up. And welcome to the Zero Life.
Yep. All right, guys.